Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Campfire. You know this place where we sit around and tell stories. A lot of times come from you, and a lot of times they come from me, but we enjoy each other's company, enjoy this fire ring, and share some camaraderie. You know, the weather's been such that this fire's pretty welcome right now. Well, it's been down a lot cooler the last few nights, and we've had some thunder and a heck of lightning shows. My golly, haven't seen that in a long time. And, well, a little bit of rain, and it's been kind of nice, folks. It's an interesting summer. Well, I know there's been some terrible weather other places, and by gosh, I feel for you, but stay safe best you can. Now, tonight, we got more of this Dillon story I want to tell you about. He's, the Bigfoot hunter, only found here on the Hidden Corners. And this is more of the continuation of Project Silva. Yeah, I really enjoy this story. It's the Cryptid War begins, and this is part 4 of that story. So get settled in, get yourself something to drink, get you some popcorn. Let's get started. The wind spoke first. It came down from the shoulders of Pike's Peak, low and dry, brushing the cedar boughs behind Greyhawk's house with the reverence of a visitor who knew not to enter uninvited. The wooden wind chimes hanging from the porch, they chimed their deep resonant tone and fell still. Inside the house, Greyhawk sat cross-legged before a stone hearth, a thin curl of sage smoke rising in front of him. His silver-streaked braids fell past his shoulders, the beads catching the candlelight like small, patient stars. Michelle sat nearby, watching him in silence. Now, she had seen her uncle perform small blessings before, at family funerals during a cousin's illness, but never like this. This was deeper, older. She could feel it in her bones. On the ground before Greyhawk sat a ceremonial bowl carved from ancient soapstone, filled with sacred tobacco, cedar, sweetgrass, charred bits of pine resin. He'd ground them together with the blunt end of a smooth river stone, then pressed the mixture into the bowl's center. He had not spoken a word since lighting the coals beneath it. The house fell like a womb of silence and smoke. And then Greyhawk began to speak. Not to her, to them. Ancestors, I call you. Walk with me. Show me what the spirits fear. Show me what the world hides. His voice was low and rhythmic, somewhere between a chant and just breath. Michelle felt the presence in the room shift as if the air had thickened, as if time itself was folding inward. This girl comes to me with questions about her man, about his brother, about the war beneath the mountains, about this man they call Ghost Horse. He lingered on the name. I knew that name long ago, before the army wore it like a medal, before the governments turned it into a ghost story. He is not legend. He is not myth. He is what they tried to bury. That was then that Greyhawk, he lifted a pinch of the burning mixture and he scattered it over the flame. The smoke rose quickly and then began to twist, unnaturally, as if pulled by some unseen thread. Michelle blinked. For a second, she swore she saw faces in the smoke. Greyhawk's breathing deepened. His eyelids fluttered, half closed. Sweat beaded at his brow. His hands rested palm up on his knees. I see the dark road. I see your man and his brother walking it, Wade with anger in his hands, Hank with fire in his heart. They follow echoes of their father. They stir bones that should not be disturbed. Michelle leaned forward. Well, what does that mean? What are they walking towards? His voice came slower now, like it was echoing through a tunnel dug through time itself. Toward what man made with blood and rage, toward something not meant to live, but underneath it all, there is a connection through bloodline. He went still. What do you mean through bloodline? Michelle whispered. Greyhawk held his fingers up to his lips to silence her. His eyelids were fluttering. Then one walks before them. A man cloaked in ash and thunder. A man whose soul speaks in the language of beasts and bone. Greyhawk opened his eyes fully. They shimmered, not with reflection, but with something lit from within. Ghost Horse. He said the name as if it were sacred. He is the bridge, the weapon. He walks both sides, life and death, man and monster. He does not serve their war, but he may be able to stop it. He serves the balance, but it will not be an easy task. Michelle's mouth went dry. Can he protect Hank and Wade? Greyhawk looked at her, not as a girl, not as his niece, but as a listener, a witness. No, he will not protect them. He will test them. Michelle recoiled at this. Test them? He must know who they are, if they are worthy, if they will stand or break. The mountain has already chosen its ghosts. The forest has already claimed its children. Only the spirit can choose its warriors. Michelle's hands tightened into her fists on her lap. Uncle, they're just trying to stop something awful from getting worse. They didn't ask for this. Greyhawk looked back to the fire, his expression unreadable. None of us asked for the war, but some of us were born with its smoke already in our lungs. He leaned forward, scattering another handful of herbs into the bowl. The smoke hissed as it twisted again, this time forming the rough outline of a horned skull. A heartbeat later, the image snapped apart into a scatter of ash. Something comes from the east, not born of man or beast, something unbound. Michelle's voice was barely a whisper. 013? Greyhawk shook his head. No, my child. Something far worse. And it will bring war. Outside, in the shadow of Pike's Peak, the wind picked up again. Michelle sat in silence, her heart pounding, as Greyhawk slowly reached for his pipe. He extinguished the last of the flame. Now, he said, standing, I must rest. We will continue this discussion later. Ghost Horse guided the jeep through the winding sandstone canyons just outside of Green River, Utah. The red cliffs rising like ancient watchmen on either side of the road. His silhouette looked etched from the land itself, broad-shouldered, face chiseled by sun and silence. The wind blew fine grit through the open window, stinging his eyes. But he didn't blink. This place had never been kind, but it was beautiful. The canyons sang if you listened. He kept the radio off. He didn't need noise to keep him company. The land spoke in its own way. The soft crunch of rubber on sun-baked gravel, the crackle of a distant hawk cry, the whisper of old spirits riding the thermal currents. He was getting closer. And the voices, those old strange frequencies buried in the marrow of his mind, were beginning to rise again. The cryptids didn't speak like men did. They vibrated. They reached. 013 was reaching. "I'm coming," he whispered in return. He passed through the book cliffs of Grand Junction by mid-afternoon, those great corrugated spines stretching like the fossilized backs of sleeping titans. He barely touched the brake as he wound his way through the flats and up into the high desert orchards that bloomed in the sun-kissed valleys of Delta County. Here, the air shifted, softer and sweeter. The scent of ripening fruit clung to the wind. In Paonia, he rolled down the window farther. A wave of peach-scented warmth hit him like a childhood memory. The orchards were heavy with fruit, branches low, bees thick in the lavender rows. He slowed, not out of need, but instinct. His eyes caught a small roadside stand with a hand-painted sign that read "Fresh Peaches" under a canopy of cottonwoods. He pulled the Jeep off the road and he stepped out. The hum of summer wrapped around him. He picked a large peach, just one, and held it to his nose, breathing deeply the sweet scent. It brought tears to his eyes, and he basked in memories of his childhood, just for a moment. He placed a $10 bill in the cigar box and walked back to his Jeep, pausing to close his eyes and savor that first bite, the juices escaping and rolling down his hand. Behind him, a screen door creaked. An old woman in an apron stepped out onto the porch of a small farmhouse and squinted into the sun. But when she looked towards the road, there was no one there, only a faint swirl of dust. The Jeep was gone. Ghost Horse wound his way eastward, cutting through the aspen-lined canyons above Glenwood Springs as the sun dipped low behind him. The narrow canyon loomed ahead, shadowed and vast, veined with a river that had carved its way through time itself. And though he passed fly fishermen and flocks of tourists snapping photos from scenic overlooks, not a single person glanced toward the man in the black Jeep. He moved like a myth, never heard and never noticed. It was just after midnight as he approached Denver, the lights of the city shimmering on the horizon like fireflies caught in a jar. Denver had always felt foreign to him, too much concrete, too little sky, but there were people here who needed him, people who didn't yet understand the forces they were stepping into. Merle's boys. He remembered them as children. Hank, always running headlong into danger. Wade, sharp-tongued and restless, eyes like their mother's, spirit like their father's. Ghost Horse touched that pouch of cedar and bone that hung around his neck. The prayers of his ancestors stirred within it like embers refusing to die. He whispered to the wind, "I'm coming, old friend." Far in the distance, over the blackened peaks of the Front Range, thunder rumbled. He pulled his Jeep off the road and closed his eyes. He'd sleep a couple hours, rest his mind a bit, and try to drown out the cacophony of voices in his head. North of Estes Park, Colorado, Hybrid 013 moved like smoke through the trees. Birds scattered in his wake, though his steps made no sound. Night was falling quickly now, casting shadows that crawled like old scars across the forest floor. His senses twitched, pulling him in strange directions. The wind carried scents he didn't recognize. Fire pits, gasoline, concrete, but beneath it all, something else. familiarity. He didn't know why he followed the pull. He only knew that he must. His breath came slow and controlled. Not animal, not man. Something in between. His claws retracted slightly. He moved upright now, not crouched. His posture was straighter than it had been in days. He was remembering what it was like to be a man. Michelle spent the afternoon trying to decipher her uncle's cryptid words. She wished he would just talk straight. Why does everything have to sound like a riddle? She was trying desperately to be patient, but she could feel the clock ticking. Her uncle had been meditating, or napping more likely, for hours now. She'd already made several phone calls to Hank and had started a fire to warm the house as the afternoon thunderstorms had brought the temperature down by nearly 20 degrees. It was only embers now, glowing like eyes in the cavernous fireplace. The air in the room was thick, soaked in cedar smoke, tension, and the silence that follows a heavy rain. Oh, yeah. Michelle sat cross-legged on the woven rug, palms resting on her knees, still and listening. Across from her, Greyhawk had fallen into something deeper than meditation. His breathing had slowed to a crawl. His spirit had crossed over, temporarily. His eyes were still closed, but after a time his mouth began to move. Whispers spoken in an old tongue, half prayer, half plea. Come, ancestors, show me what walks beneath the earth. Show me the bloodline buried beneath the lies. The smoke around the hearth shifted again, not from any breeze. It curled upward, twinning itself into shapes, into movement. Figures formed and broke apart, fragments of memory dragged through time. Michelle saw them. A soldier kneeling in snow, rifle in his hands. A young boy with wide, terrified eyes inside a steel containment chamber. A fire roaring in the depths of a mountain. Bones stitched with wires. And somewhere among it all, Hank. Greyhawk's head suddenly jerked upwards, his eyes wide, but not with confusion or drowsiness. The air in the room suddenly became fragrant with herbs that hadn't been there a moment before. Michelle sat up straighter, her breath caught in her throat. These are bones that should not be disturbed, Greyhawk continued, his voice now distant, as if coming through that tunnel. The smoke twisted again, now forming a shape, a face, wild-eyed, half human, half beast. Michelle stared into the hollow sockets as the shape hovered over the fire. Greyhawk was barely breathing now, his eyelids fluttering and a soft chant, too quiet to make out the words, was forming on his lips. The figure in the smoke changed again, became younger, a young man in uniform. Greyhawk reached out, his fingers trembling as he touched the smoke. He whispered in a barely audible voice, "The hybrid, 013. He carries Merle's blood." Michelle gasped. Greyhawk turned to her now, eyes burning with what had been revealed to him. He is their brother, Merle's first son from his first marriage, lost in the chaos of war and swallowed by the walls of Black Dome. Michelle's voice was a whisper. Oh my God! The reality hit her like a landslide, crushing and impossible to stop. Hybrid 13 wasn't just a government experiment. He wasn't just a cryptid hybrid. He was Hank and Wade's half-brother. Greyhawk exhaled slowly as though releasing generations of grief. And now you understand why this cannot end in blood. He turned back to the fire, which had begun to crackle again, although no one had touched it. There will be a war, Michelle. A war between a corrupted government who is trying to hide the truth and the men who will try to expose them. And in the middle of it all, a hybrid who is part man, part beast. But he's not alone among the monsters. There are others. Skinwalkers, shapeshifters, men who can transform into beasts, and beasts who can think like men. And the one who can communicate with them all, Ghost Horse. The ancestors had spoken. Ghost Horse pulled onto Spear Boulevard and into the urban sprawl with visible discomfort. The city pressed against him like a living thing, steel and glass and electric hum. He rolled the window halfway down, but the air offered no relief. Too many people, too much motion. Everything vibrated. The traffic light turned red and the Jeep idled at the intersection. A man crossed the street in front of him, earbuds in his ears, face down, unaware. A woman jogged past with a stroller, her child crying at invisible ghosts. The skyline loomed around him. Corporate buildings, hospital towers, distant cranes clawing at the sky, adding to the skyline. To Ghost Horse, it felt like being underwater, drowning. There was a static hum in the city, constant, invisible, maddening. Not mechanical, not electromagnetic, but human. A resonance of minds pressed too close together. Desperate thoughts, broken dreams, echoes of grief, greed, memory, and hunger swirling through alleys and billboards like unfiltered noise. It short-circuited the senses. Ghost Horse exhaled through his nose and put his hands in his pockets. Inside was a smooth obsidian stone and the bone of a red-tailed hawk, the last remnants of his grounding ritual. He whispered a phrase in Lakota, hoping to steady his focus. Mitakoi Oyasan. We are all related. But in the city, that phrase felt more like a warning than a comfort. He didn't need a GPS, never had. Normally, he could feel his way through energy, through spirit, through the fine threads that connected him to everything walking, rooted, or unseen. But here, the signals were tangled like telephone wires after a storm. He took a left, and then a right, passing rows of coffee shops and vape lounges and ghost-faced tech workers sipping matcha under their Wi-Fi routers. His fingers tightened on the wheel. Too much, he muttered aloud. Too many people. His mind reached for Wade and Hank, not their voices, not even their faces, but their thread. That fine thread was twisted and warped now, bouncing off buildings and dish signals and cell towers. Now this is a guy who could find a deer in the pitch-dark desert, blindfolded, but here in the glittering heart of man's empire, he was almost blind. At a storage facility on the outskirts of Denver, Wade and Hank worked in silence, boxing up the last of their father's legacy. There were over a dozen crates now, each one marked with a black Sharpie. MDPSBD, do not open. The acronym stood for Merle Dillon, Project Silva, Black Dome. The metal shelves groaned under the weight of journals, reels of microfilm, files, and Polaroids of test subjects. Michelle had texted a short time ago. Uncle uncovered important info. On my way back now. Hank hadn't responded yet. He wanted to get the boxes hid as quickly as possible and then get back to the office to meet Michelle. They had loaded everything into Wade's SUV to drive across town to his personal storage unit. It was safe and secure, and rented under a fake name, so it couldn't be traced back to him. Why didn't Dad ever tell us what he was up to? Hank muttered. All these years he let us think he had another family, that he was cheating on Mom. God, we all hated him for it. But he just went on, letting us believe that. I don't understand why he didn't just tell the truth. Wade looked up. Maybe he couldn't. Bullshit. He drove our family apart, Wade. He made Mom leave, all for this. He waved his arm towards her dad's boxes, now sitting on the metal shelves. Wade shut the storage unit door with a bang and secured the heavy padlock. He turned to face his brother. He knew it would change everything, that's why. It did change everything. It broke up our family. Silence passed between them, thick with unspoken truth. They were no longer just chasing shadows. This was family blood tangled in secrets, the broken bonds between father and son. Hank's phone buzzed. Another text from Michelle. Almost there. Now, we better get going, Hank said with a heavy sigh. I'm anxious to hear what Michelle's uncle had to say. Not far from Wade's law office, Ghost Horse slowed the Jeep. He could feel it now. Faint, but it was there. It was a thread, pulling through the static. He closed his eyes at a red light, ignoring the honking cab behind him, and murmured an invocation. Spirit of the Hawk, show me the path through the storm. And just like that, a thought surfaced. A location buried not in his mind, but in the circling cosmos of universal thought. South Denver, Evans and Broadway, near the old train yard. Concrete, steel, and brick. He turned hard onto the next street. He was close now. Michelle pulled in just as Hank was stepping out of Wade's black SUV. Perfect timing, he called out to her, wrapping her in a big hug. "Bah, I missed you last night." "Yeah, right. I know you two were up all night drinking pots of coffee and digging through your dad's boxes." Hank grinned at that. She was right. The three of them were walking up the concrete steps to the front entrance to the building that housed the law office when a black hybrid Jeep pulled up to the front of the steps. All three turned in unison to stare at the unmarked vehicle and the man inside. Michelle reached over and grasped Hank's hand. A slow, low growl issued forth from Sassy's throat. The man cut the engine and stepped out of the vehicle. Broad frame, sun-leathered skin, long braided hair down his back. His canvas coat was dusted with red desert powder. His boots looked older than the war in which their father had served. His eyes, piercing dark, unreadable, landed on Wade first, then Hank. "You're Merle's boys," Hank bristled. "And you must be Ghost Horse." The man merely nodded his head and spoke in a quiet, confident, and deep voice. "Get your things. You're coming with me." Just outside of Estes Park, Colorado, sits an abandoned cabin where hikers occasionally stop to shelter from the rainstorms. This place hadn't been used in years. Nestled at the edge of the Rocky Mountain National Park, half swallowed by overgrowth and collapsed timbers, it was as if the building was still standing by sheer willpower alone. Wade shifted uneasily in the passenger seat of the Jeep. "You sure this is it?" Ghost Horse didn't reply. He looked out the window, as if listening to something that Wade couldn't hear. A few moments later, Hank and Michelle pulled up in Hank's battered pickup truck. It had been a 2-hour drive from Denver to Estes Park, and Hank and Michelle had plenty of time to discuss Uncle Greyhawk's vision. "Wade, I need to talk to you in private," Hank said as he got out of the truck and approached that black Jeep. Ghost Horse looked up, studying Hank's face. In a quiet voice, he said, "So you know about 13. I'll give you two a few minutes." He grabbed a small parcel from the back of the Jeep and walked off alone into the forest. Wade rolled his eyes. I didn't get one word out of him the entire ride up here. "Never mind that," Hank said. "I've got to tell you what Michelle's uncle said. And what the hell are we doing out here anyway?" Wade shrugged his shoulders. "Your guess is as good as mine. The man's not forthcoming with any information at all." The two brothers sat down on the step of the small cabin while Michelle tended to the dogs. "Look, you're not going to believe this, Wade. The hybrid, the Bigfoot 13, well, it was originally a man. They did terrible experiments on him, supposedly against his consent. They were trying to create a hybrid between a man and a Bigfoot, but Wade, that man, you are not going to believe this. He was Dad's son from his first marriage." Wade's face dropped. "You've got to be kidding me." I know. I didn't believe it either, but Michelle says her uncle saw the whole thing played out in his vision, and if what she says is true, then Wade, 013, is our brother. Well, folks, that's a pretty good place to end this story tonight, and we're definitely going to tell you some more of that story next time I see you. It gets gooder. It must. Well, I hope you enjoyed yourselves tonight. I want you all to tell some friends to come join us next time. There's plenty of room around this fire. We'll make more room if we have to, by golly. Now, y'all be good to one another. Remember, that's really what this world's all about. It's just sort of a place to test ourselves, isn't it? Well, I'll see you again soon. Now, until then, this is Clay Steele. Good night. Hey folks, Clay Steele here. You know, I spend a lot of time outdoors around this here campfire. If you're like me, you get downright annoyed by all those pesky mosquitoes buzzing around. They're just looking for a free meal. Nothing ruins a good night under the stars faster than slapping and scratching at bites. And that's why I keep the bee-itch stop. I keep it handy. One swipe and that itch is gone. No more burning, no more scratching, just good old relief. Made right here in Nevada with all natural ingredients. It's safe for the whole family. So if you're tired of being a mosquito buffet, do yourself a favor and get you some bee-itch stop today. And this is Clay Steele. Watch out for them bugs.